Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Exodus chapter 1 in a clear and simple way, step by step. In this explainer, we're going to take a deliberate step-by-step walk through the original Hebrew text. We'll be looking at the context, how the Israelites multiplied, Pharaoh's harsh oppression, the brave resistance of the midwives, some key ideas, and finally, practical lessons to take away. Part 1. Context and introduction, setting the stage. Now, right before we look at that very first verse, I want to clarify exactly how we're approaching this. We are exclusively using what's called the Peshat method today. So, what does that mean? Well, basically, we're sticking strictly to the literal, clear-cut facts of the text. There's no mystical interpretation here, no deep hidden symbolism. We just want to understand exactly who did what, where, and why. To set the stage, we're picking up the story right as Jacob's family arrives in Egypt, where his son Joseph is already living. Part 2. Israelites multiply in Egypt, verses 1 to 7. The book of Exodus actually kicks off with a very specific family tree, the names of Jacob's sons who came down into Egypt, each bringing their own household. We've got Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. It's really setting the baseline, reminding us exactly whose legacy we're following here. Verses 5 and 6 tell us that this original group was exactly 70 people, 70 souls. Joseph, as we know, was already down there in Egypt. But then there's a huge time jump. The text points out that Joseph died, his brothers died, and in fact that entire founding generation passed away. But look at what happens next. Verse 7 absolutely emphasizes this massive, explosive population growth. The text just stacks these descriptive words together. It says they were fruitful, they multiplied greatly, they became exceedingly numerous, to the point that the land was filled with them. This isn't just your standard family growth, right? That little group of 70 literally transforms into a massive nation. Part 3. Pharaoh's cruel oppression, verses 8 to 14. So the whole narrative totally flips in verse 8. We get a new king in power, and this guy knows absolutely nothing about Joseph's legacy. All that past goodwill, completely erased. And this new Pharaoh is instantly terrified of the Israelites. Why? Well, it's pure political paranoia. He looks at their massive numbers and basically fears a fifth column. He's terrified that if a war breaks out, this huge population is going to team up with Egypt's enemies, fight against them, and then just up and leave the country. So what's his first move? State-sponsored enslavement. He sets slave masters over them, forcing the Israelites into these massive, back-breaking construction projects to build the store cities of Pithom and Ramses. The goal here is pretty straightforward: break their physical strength and absolutely crush their spirit. But you've got to appreciate the incredible irony in verse 12. Pharaoh's master plan completely backfires. The text plainly says that the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread. Instead of shrinking the population, the suffering actually accelerated their growth and resilience. And because of that, the Egyptians just end up dreading them even more. Since Plan A was a bust, the Egyptians escalate things. Verses 13 and 14 describe this really brutal reality. They made their lives bitter with crushing, hard labor, working with mortar, brick, and all sorts of relentless agricultural work out in the fields. It was an all-encompassing, ruthless physical slavery designed to totally break them. Part 4. The Midwives' Brave Resistance, verses 15 to 21. When forced labor doesn't stop the population growth, Pharaoh resorts to something much, much darker. He issues a horrifying command directly to the Hebrew midwives: kill all the newborn boys right there on the delivery stool. But I want you to notice this amazing little historical detail. The massive, all-powerful Pharaoh, he doesn't even get a name in the text. But the text makes absolutely sure we remember the names of the two ordinary women who stood up to him, Shifrah and Puah. Verse 17 highlights the ultimate act of civil disobedience. These midwives had a choice, right? Obey the most powerful man on earth or obey their own moral conscience. And the text tells us they feared God, so they completely defied the king of Egypt. They deliberately let those infant boys live. Naturally, Pharaoh eventually notices that his terrible plan isn't working, so he calls them in and demands to know what's going on. In verse 19, they come up with this brilliant excuse. They tell Pharaoh, hey, Hebrew women aren't like Egyptian women. They're vigorous. They give birth before we even get there. It's a really daring, shrewd deflection that actually weaponizes the Egyptians' own prejudices and fears right back at them. And what happens? Verses 20 and 21 show us that God rewarded that immense moral courage. Because they preserved life, God was kind to them. The people kept right on increasing, and God even gave Shifrah and Puah families or households of their own. Part 5. Key Ideas and Explanations. Verse 22. Since the secret decree to the midwives totally failed, verse 22 brings us to Pharaoh's most desperate escalation yet. He takes this murderous command and broadens it to the entire general public. He orders all his people, "Every boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live." It's an open, state-sanctioned decree, literally turning the lifeblood of Egypt, the Nile River, into a weapon of execution. Looking back at the simple Peshat text we just covered, there are basically three core motivations driving all this conflict. First, you have the Israelites, who are really just surviving and multiplying abundantly. Then, you have the new Pharaoh, who is completely blinded by this paranoid fear of losing control of his nation. And finally, standing between them, you have the midwives, Shifrah and Puah, who are anchored by a deep reverence for God and a commitment to preserving human life. Part 6. Practical Lessons and Recap. Even though we've stuck strictly to the literal historical events today, there's a massive lesson here about human nature. The biggest takeaway from Chapter 1 is the sheer power of individual moral choices. Shifrah and Puah show us that true reverence for what's right gives ordinary people the power to disrupt massive systemic cruelty. They are absolute proof that you don't need an army to fight evil. You just need a steadfast refusal to participate in it. Let's do a really quick recap of our step-by-step journey today. It started with 70 Israelites entering Egypt and experiencing massive population growth. Then, a new pharaoh took over, got scared, and enslaved them. When his forced labor didn't break them, two brave midwives refused his secret order to kill the baby boys. And finally, a furious pharaoh ordered the whole country to throw every newborn Hebrew boy into the river. We leave the Israelites in their absolute darkest hour, facing an impossible threat. How in the world will they survive this devastating final decree? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.